So a few people requested that I read some poems, and while I haven't done a reading in North America in several years, um, I decided to do one on YouTube, if you'll pardon the surroundings, because you're in my rather small apartment right now. But anyway, nothing stopped me from reading a poem or three, and so let's begin. I think I'm going to read three today, and we're going to start with a long one. Beauty, Bluegrass, Blood. More mud than bone or muscle, the marsh on her like salt and sulphur, smells sharp, needle-tipped, and curled to the nose like the hints of ash in the water. Her bruised wrist, the color of bitter melons, and she stares at the audacious landscape with a cockeyed gangster stance, and does not smile as she slips off the mud-bogged boots. The leech marks pox her legs as she slips off jeans, moving around me with a tactless grace, eyes clear with slowness she has around men. I throw her a rag to wipe her legs. We don't talk, don't smile. We act bleached like bone. No sex but sex, no love but. Part 2. Leaving the gray glow of the gas station, she glaring at the kudzu and witch hazel thatching the highway. The wind rakes her ribs, and her bandage soiled with the road suit, the cypress trees choking out near the Savannah highway. Pine bone and red clay road, which what I learned about revenge, I learned from her. We spoke of a man wrapped in a carpet and beaten bloody with the weight of soap in socks. Her breath heaved with corn whiskey. We don't talk of night. The spectre yellow lights blur. Clawhammer banjo hung up in the air. My teeth are bloodied. She kisses them anyway. There were farms ablaze in the distance, and nothing else but imported pines. Part 3. Too drunk to be in love, she asked me about the reason if I spit on Sherman's statue in Washington. She pulls my hair, the tracks in her arms visible, remembering the cotton field outside of Florence, South Carolina, and dry rot oak platforms in a field raised 10 feet mid-air with the crossbeam rattling like a gate. Nature does nothing but leap. But I knew here hanged a few, 5 miles from the dirt highway, 1987, the hum and watermelon musk of rattlesnakes nearby. The locals would chase them out with gasoline. Some things you know, you don't know. Some things you don't know that you do. End poem. That's a new poem, and it's a little bit more complicated than a lot of the other stuff I do. Here's another new poem. It's called Metastasis. Sometimes I say too much, this violence. She sleeps on the cot in the other room. Heavy branches on the family tree, molded fruit of semaphore dangling, her cells dividing, whispered love is the admission of the feet, the way a mother pulls a son whose knee is skinned, and dermis lays open to the world. I admit, sometimes I say too much. Now there is a divide, a cleft, an aperture. The twisted tissue moving like clouds, nodding when lightning strikes. A husk of a beetle cleaving to ginkgo bark. The winter blows dry on my face as I hang both our clothes on the sun-parched porch. The cicadas come in the spring. Misled boys preparing for porn relationships in Wikipedia. Don't know of graveyards of unpublished poems. The wiping carefully around incision wounds. Holding a person trembling at her bodily insurrection. Sweat and exhaustion reddening the eyes. I know I say too much. Poets do. I'd like to go home. The heavy branches fall. Mitochondria break. And we're going to do one more, maybe one that's not so dark. Although I'm not known for writing a whole bunch of light poems. But we'll look at one here. This is from a chapbook, actually, called The Trouble with the Erotic. And the poems here were written a few years back. This poem is called Choose Love. In an Oakland parking lot, a friend photographs a wall with Choose Love scrawled on the cinder blocks in the parking lot, like the tail of a spermatozoa against Soviet gray. The way I ponder, the black paint on gray, wall against gray, sky in the day, the bay is oddly devoid of fog. The idea squirms neatly into my head, spoons with a question. What is the hardest part to bear in choosing? The way love flattens in the throat, sticks one layer down, goes translucent like ice on dark pavement. So does eternally aggravated understand that the idea of choosing and the idea of love put hands on each other's hips and blindly, sloppily, kiss. Still the love knows everything melts and grows hard, rigid, like wet wool drying on a line. So I know, how could I choose otherwise? The choice is not made, but burned into the brick of a heart muscle. Nerves disentangle into raw pulsing at the mention of touch. I never had a choice. Yet, on another wall that shows our faces as they are now, fall in love, not fall in line. Life, then, is a narrow channel between the aperture of a woman's arm and the rest of the world.